Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me, and I hopefully have my audio issues fixed, and we should be all set and good to go. So, everyone, this is the second episode of War Room, and I wanted to cover in this episode something that was really relevant for me after my experience at Worlds, and it kind of made me realize that a lot of people should talk about it. And then Travis had the good idea to talk about it on the last Cratecast episode, but I wanted to use this as another chance to kind of have a personal learning experience, but also to continue the discussion, because I think this is something that we're probably going to have to talk more and more about as they become more players and we go to more serious events, especially with what we saw with the judging at Worlds. I can turn up the audio. I'm just hearing someone say that they needed more audio. So I turned my mic up and I moved it closer. Hopefully that helps. So Travis, is there anything you would like to say before we get started?
I mean, not more than the notes. Thanks for having me on. It's a topic that's been on my mind, obviously, between our latest cast and just in general. It's been on my mind, honestly, for years, off and on, especially coming in as a new player. And I'm glad we're getting to talk about it. It's sort of as I mentioned on the cast, I'm glad we're getting to talk about it and kind of using the platform, because a lot of the things that are coming up here, especially for self-advocacy, don't even come up that much in my game. Some of this stuff will, because we're going to talk about what I consider to be genuinely innocuous things, and we'll bring that up. But some of the bigger things that maybe even happen to you, like you're going to have some personal experiences, just don't even happen to me anymore. Like people, it just don't happen to me. So I can't use that. So I'd rather just have these examples come up so that people can feel more comfortable doing it. Because I think a lot of the problems that come up in a lot of cases is not because anyone's a villain. I think a lot of it comes from inexperience. People, this is a gaming community, right? So there's a lot of people that are more naturally introverted. That's fine. There's nothing. That's something actually worth bringing up that's not in the notes here, is like America kind of treats the idea of introvert as a 4-letter word. Like it's perfectly fine being introverted, right? The problem is that some situations, being an introvert can sometimes be a penalty. And this is sometimes one of those things, right? And so one of the things that's best to arm people, especially introverts, is removing ambiguity and unfamiliarity. So that way you kind of know what to do to limit the necessary amount of interaction you have to do.
Yep, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And the portrayal of introvert has like a lot of different versions or conceptions, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people are, when they hear introvert, they think of someone that kind of just like sits in their house and doesn't leave and has an awkward time interacting with people socially, so they just want to not be near them. And I think I've noticed,
which is really unfair portrayal, by the way.
It is, yeah. And I've noticed a lot, like I'm an introverted person because I realized now that I'm in like the dating scene again, like I realized I'm someone that does not recharge by going to like an X-Wing event. It takes energy from me, and I've noticed that like I need my one day a week where I'm not doing a lot, and for some reason that just clicks for me and I recharge.
Actually, it might be worth bringing that up since we're talking about it. Man, this is super not in our notes, so I don't have, usually I have citations and stuff when I do stuff like this. So anyway, this is going a bit by memory, so hopefully I won't overspeak a little bit. So that's actually one of the better ways to intro extrovert versus introvert as a quick heuristic. It is not, there are, of course, mannerisms associated with it, but the quickest way to associate it is how quickly you prefer to associate or are air quotes recharged, is whether you prefer to be in crowds or not. So most people would assume, especially if you've met me or the fact I'm on a podcast, you think I'm an extrovert. I am not. I'm also not an introvert. By definition, I'm actually an ambivert. I actually share characteristics from both.
Okay.
So I do not get energized by crowds. I actually don't. I also don't really like to be left alone for very long periods of time. So I'm somewhere in the middle. So I'm one of those people that I like to go to cafes and then sit by myself, as weird as that sounds. Like I sort of like to be surrounded a little bit by people, but at a distance. So I don't like to be in concerts. So I don't like to be crushed. I actually really, really hate being crushed. Probably a lot of people do, but it actually, I'm not claustrophobic, but it makes me feel really like weirdly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I basically, I guess it's sort of my brusque nature. It's just the reason I'm a comfortable public speaker is I just usually don't care a lot about what people think, which is a unfortunate quirk that has a positive and negatives associated with it. It's
Yep.
just sometimes positive in like a business quirk, right? In terms of business world, it has negatives associated with it. It has social stigmas that can come, but it means that I'm comfortable inserting myself into situations. It just is not something I necessarily like doing, right? I'm just not as embarrassed by it or like worried about it.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not so like, so X-Wing events also drained me quite a bit, right? I need like, I'm done, right? I'm done after like, I enjoy them. I love going to X-Wing events. I love being around people and meeting people I like, but like even by the end of a day, especially like Worlds, man, at the end of every single day, I was meeting a lot of people. I needed time at the end of the day where I was just kind of burnt, right? Like this is one of those things. And I know there's plenty of extroverted people that just sort of like energized by it, right? And just kept wanting to just keep going. And it's one of those things. So anyway.
Well, that's what I use.
But
The podcast.
That's what I meant more about introverted people, is that especially with ambiguity and stuff, it's easy to freeze. And I don't think this is necessarily untrue of extroverted people, but I feel like extroverted people are far more comfortable, air quotes, making it up as they go.
Sure.
Introverted people, and again, loose heuristic. This is not meant to categorize everyone that is more introverted, but are far more likely to not feel comfortable pushing those boundaries or doing something out of the qualms. So the goal here is to arm people with familiarity, to remove ambiguity, and hopefully make you feel more comfortable in these situations. And like I said, we have notes. We'll go into those topics as we go into them. But